Bagseed Chronicles is a podcast about cannabis.
Well, that's a pretty way of putting it.
Hello, welcome again back to the Bagseed Chronicles. I am Uncle Dig. I have a very exciting guest for you this episode, and in fact next episode as well. I've got Oregon Rooted, or at least one of the hosts of Oregon Rooted, Higher Peaks, on here to talk cannabis and the culture. Oregon Rooted is a podcast that I listened to for quite a long time. I think they quit publishing last February. But they're getting ready to come back, and I am excited to have Higher Peaks on my podcast today. So please welcome Higher Peaks. And before that interview, there'll be a quick garden update. I'm really excited. Let's overgrow the world. Uncle Dig's garden update. Hello, it is July 11th. 2022, this is Gardening Zone 8B, and I am Uncle Dig with your garden update. I have mitigated my blossoming ant problem with a trick Higher Peaks showed me, laying out ant traps like you would in your house. You, of course, remove those when you water. I usually use diatomaceous earth, but there is a bit of a shortage of that currently, so I can't find any. I have sprayed a spinosad-based pesticide called Jack's Dead Bug on my plants and peppers last Wednesday. And I will be spraying BT this evening. As caterpillar season is upon us, I will be spraying an as-needed rotation of Dr. Zyme's 3-in-1 Organicide and BT, as well as hosing off the plants frequently. I am battling aphids, potato bugs, grasshoppers, and leafhoppers currently. Wish me luck. All the plants are vegging well. I have picked up a few yellow leaves off, and I may get more aggressive with fertilizer as they appear to get bigger, and I assume they have consumed most of the latent nutrients in the pot. They received CalMag on Saturday and will be given age-old grow probably tomorrow. All but the Cannatonic and 2 Amnesia Haze are over my head. They take a minimum of 6 gallons for the Fire of Maroof 2 in the 45-gallon pot, and 4 gallons of watering for the 30-gallon and 20-gallon pots. Though I have been feeding them an extra 2 gallons most days for a total of 8 and 6 gallons per pot, it takes a lot of water to support plants this big, I'm learning, and it's hot here in Southern Oregon. It was 104 today. I was worried that the Cannatonic may have been flowering, but maybe I was worried for no reason. Both Fire of Maroofs have had their second trellis added. The other plants, besides the Amnesia Haze, will require their second trellis this week. I am excited to see these girls flowering, probably next month. Now, my peppers are going great. They also require daily waterings. I've tried 2 of the new hybrids so far. One of them I call Mildy Wildy, and the other I call Sadistic Citrus. The Mildy Wildy is a nice, sweet, smoky pepper with a mild burn. The Sadistic Citrus is one of the spicier peppers I have grown. It has a citrusy taste, but it is red hot, man. I hope to be making my first batches of hot sauce at the end of this month. Well, that's it for my garden update. I hope everyone is doing well in their gardens, and I hope everyone has a bountiful and easy harvest. Good luck. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Higher Peaks from Oregon Rooted onto the Bagseed Chronicles. Higher Peaks is a cannabis grower, proud father, guitar lover, and podcast producer based out of Southern Oregon. Hey, Higher Peaks, how you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me on, man.
Hey, yeah, thanks for being here. What have you been smoking on today?
Well, stuff with you.
Yeah. We had a little bit of an Afghan, and then you shared something with me, and I can't remember.
That was that apple fritter from Dewey's. I like that. Dewey's is a newer brand that just came out, Dewey Farms, but I like the pre-rolls.
Yeah, I've been seeing apple fritter around a lot lately. It's getting a popular strain.
It is. I didn't really know about it until then, but yeah, I've seen it in concentrate now, and flower.
Yeah. It's definitely like a sativa leaner more, I think, than some of the other
It
stuff
is.
I'm smoking.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it. How long have you been consuming cannabis?
Oh gosh, since I was like 17,
Okay, and that was
about 80,000 years ago.
80,000 years ago?
No, I'm 47, so
Okay.
shit, like 30 years.
Okay, yeah, 30 years. So that's a long time. That's a little bit longer than me. So,
And I'm still alive, man.
hey, yeah, look at you. No reefer madness to speak of.
No, and I don't go around and rape kids and young women and all that stuff. So
Yeah, everybody's behaving themselves. So, how has the consumption and the culture around consumption changed over that time? When I talk about consumption, I think I'm talking really about consumption methods.
yeah,
And like levels of consumption. And then when I talk about the culture, I think that's self-explanatory.
yeah. Well, like starting with like the methods, the sad part is we were talking about this, but we were smoking on like dirt weed.
Yeah.
We called it the brown frown, full of seed stems, headaches.
Yeah. Make you hungry, not
make you
high.
hungry. And so top that off with these damn metal pipes and metal screens, man. Like, throw a little diazinon, some pesticide on there, and paraquat, I think, was on that brown weed.
Oh, I'm sure some of it.
Yeah. But then we had these metal screens and metal pipes, made your weed taste like shit, and it was just a mess, really.
I've smoked salvia out of those before, but I don't think I've ever smoked weed out of one.
No, you don't want to.
I won't.
I remember the first glass pipe that came out, or not came out, that I found, on a pot shop type shelf, and it was amazing, man. It made the weed taste way better, and you didn't have a screen and shit like that, and that was like the whole thing. Then all these glass blowers started hitting the market, and all this really cool glass started coming out. It hasn't stopped since. I mean,
No, it's amazing.
yeah, but a lot of joints, a lot of zigzags. But then, as it kind of fruited out and we got into the green cannabis, green bud, we started doing a lot more bongs. And, as soon as the rec market hit, or actually at least medical, all this whole dab vaping thing came out. So, I mean, that's kind of the progression.
Right.
But back in the day, it was just straight papers and metal.
Well, you can get rid of a paper pretty easily. If someone rolls up on you, you can break that down and toss it in the wind pretty quick.
Exactly. And, I mean, even if it smelled like it, if you didn't have nothing on you. But yeah, in Oregon, though, they really never messed with us.
Yeah, and that's something I'm finding that, like, in general, the culture around, like, base level consumption in Oregon, like, if you're being even remotely considerate, no one cares.
Yeah.
Just no one cares. If you're going like far enough away where your smoke's not blowing on the children, no one seems to mind here. and it's been a culture shock for me, for someone from Texas, from the South, to come out here. No one probably is going to bust your chops about it. It's just not going to happen, really.
You mean or here or Texas?
Here in Oregon.
Oh,
in Texas,
right.
you're going to get in tons of trouble. Be careful.
Oh, yeah. yeah. You got to be careful with just a seed.
Oh, yeah. And it's also a culture shock going there. If I consume there with old friends or something, it's just like, oh, like, have a snap. And then they're done for it's like, that's it. That's all the weed. So, like, everyone, like, there's not a culture of, like, sitting down and chopping it up. And, like, everyone brings, like, an eighth or, like, a couple grams. And everyone just starts smoking, It's not like that there. It's very, like, let's get it in us and let's get it out of the way. It's not as fun.
It's not. And I mean, even in our black market days, we'd have to find places.
Right.
Whether that was the woods or at someone's house, but we would have circles and stuff. But yeah, now, I mean, we have full on like 40, 50 people in one spot smoking weed now.
Like, people will walk up and be like, oh, is this the spot where everyone's smoking weed? And then everyone looks at them and be like, yes, man, it is. Here's some weed. It's great. It's amazing. Like,
yeah, and this culture shift as far as like how people view it, back when I was first starting, or even in my 20s, I mean, you had to hide it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would call you stoner, and now that's just like a compliment now. But back then they call you stoner and a pothead, and you just sat around and didn't do shit, and it's just a lot of stigma, man. And then now it's the cool thing to do.
Yeah, it does
so now
seem
it's
that way.
Which I don't like as much, because now it's just like it feels like everybody does it, and half of them do it for the wrong reason.
Right. I'm not into people. I'm not into doing something just to be doing that something. Like, you've got to be getting something out of it. And I think that some people, while they're getting something out of it, Like, it does seem like some of the younger people are just kind of smoking weed because that's what's done. Almost like a lot of people in the 50s smoked because that's what you did.
Exactly.
And I
or
don't,
drink, same thing. You're at a party and everybody's drinking, so you have a drink. So.
And I'm totally against like anyone doing anything that they have no natural interest in. Like, I'm pro psychedelic, I'm pro cannabis, but if you don't want to do that, do not let me talk you into doing it.
Yeah. Well, and it shouldn't be just be done because it's cool. I mean, when I first started, I actually liked it just because, I mean, for me, it's always really kept me productive, actually. So, I mean, it's always kind of been a tool and a benefit to me. I'll admit, when I first started, it was not because of medical.
Right.
But it quickly became once I realized what I could use it for.
Yeah.
But at 17, you're not looking for cannabis for medical purposes.
Well, no, and my path was different. My path was kind of straight to medical. Like, I dabbled a little bit when I was younger. Like I was telling you earlier, in high school, I tried it a couple times, but the weed we were getting in Texas wasn't worth it, so I didn't really do it anymore. It wasn't worth it. It was crap, so I didn't do it. But when I got out of the Army, an older Marine kind of led me down and kind of sat me down. He's like, "Hey, why don't you try this?" Because they were going to pump me full of meds, just like it was like early 2000s. They were just pumping us full of meds and being like, "Here you go," and it wasn't really working. So I just went with weed, and that was a great decision, I think.
Yeah.
So,
well, good.
Yeah, and I think that all we were ever advocating for is that be an option for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it should be.
Yeah.
And it's become Oregon, as far as like cannabis scene. If you want to come here for medical or recreational, it's a good state to be in.
I agree.
I mean, even if you want to grow, it's, and I'll just briefly throw this in, but we had talked about this, but anymore, like in Oregon, it's more kind of you got to worry more about thieves than you do security or police. I mean,
yeah.
So law enforcement, which is kind of a weird dynamic, before in the black market days, I mean, you're talking 20 plus years possible. Even
in the medical days, they were coming up, the police were coming out and chopping down people's garden and then asking whether it was legal later. There was a lot of like really unfortunate police interaction back in the day. And I've always been nervous around cops, but that's my own problem. I just don't like armed people running around. I just don't like it. But visibly armed, I guess. Hide your gun. Make everyone comfortable. But now, like you said, the threat is from people hopping a fence or like sneaking into your yard and stealing your weed. And I've been very lucky where I'm at. I haven't run into that, but everyone else who I know that grows has run into it. And like I said, eventually I feel like my number's going to be up and I'm worried. So I'm knocking on wood here. Yeah. I've been really lucky. I haven't had any of my stuff ripped from the plant. And that's what we're talking about specifically is what we call that. We call them here in a lot of places in the culture, call them rippers.
Rippers, yeah.
And if you go on vacation and your stuff isn't flowering, that's when they come. If you go out of town for an afternoon on the river, that's when they're there.
Yeah, that's just it, man. It's just like you do all the work all year. You spend all the time, you do your lollipopping or your top, whatever you do, trellising, all that hard work, nutrients, feeding them. You get to the last stretch and you get ripped off. And that's just fucked.
And a lot of times they take it too soon too. So it's
and what are they going to do? They hack at it for one, and then what do they do? They're not going to sell it like that. I would assume they're smart enough that they would think they'd have to hang it and at least dry it. At least.
I don't know, man.
That's not going to happen.
I think it depends on who's ripping you off, because I feel like there's categories of rippers, right? There's opportunists, like you'll have a guy in your circle and you won't know he's a dirtbag,
right?
And he'll come in and just kind of clean you out with like a sawzall one day, and run off with like the tops and leave you the bottoms, and like you'd be done. But you'll never know. You'll figure it out years later who it was that ripped you off. And you'll be like, really? Yeah. That's one where it's just an opportunistic scumbag who you've got in your circle. And there's two others. There's teenagers.
Sure.
Which a lot of times they'll just cut your plants down, hear a noise, and run off and leave your weed in your yard.
Look what I got.
That's teenagers. Yeah. They're not even going to successfully smoke it. It's been a learning experience for them. They'll never do that again, but you're still fucked.
Yeah. Right.
But and then there's crews, and I feel like those are some usually bigger grows or maybe smaller targets of opportunity, but the crews are scary.
Yeah.
Because they'll come in from out of
Wipe
state.
it out. Yeah.
and they'll tie you up in your closet and,
I know,
and take like your 100 or so plants and just leave you there.
Well, yeah, and there's been a couple farms that's been attempted at. Like the Dirty Arm Farm. This has been a couple years ago, but they almost got jacked.
Well, I feel like there was a guy out, I don't remember if it was Merlin or Hugo out there. It was years ago, but a crew from Atlanta came in. And they like literally tied him up and like beat him up and like took his plants right out from under him, and it ruined his whole, it bankrupted him,
Yeah.
There's no insurance on any of this stuff.
Well, big or small, it is an agricultural crop that you're banking on, and it's especially outdoor. It's season to season, so doesn't matter if it's rippers or bad weather. I mean, you lose it and you're broke.
Yeah,
whether that's weed broke or money broke.
Yeah, yeah, and I see that the culture is more open now, but it does feel like some people come into it for the wrong reason. So is that something you don't like as much about the culture now?
No, you mean that it's cool to do, or that they come in for the wrong reasons?
That people are coming in it for the wrong reasons.
So as especially with my podcast, as I've evolved with interviewing people and stuff, I've always had stomach issues.
Right.
So right away when I was younger, I realized that I could use it for that, and I've always used it for that,
right?
And it works well. There's a few other things I can use it for now that's come along later in life. I got some arthritis now. I'm an old fucker, so there's things I use it for sleep, stuff like that. So medically speaking, it has a lot of value, and so I think that if you want to be serious about it, especially long term, I think medically that should be something in your arsenal. Meaning that if you're going to do it long term and do a lot of it, I don't think you should just do it recreationally.
Right.
I mean, that would be like saying, okay, well, I want to drink. You don't drink every day and not be an alcoholic.
Right.
If you drink all day every day, you're going to mess your life up. So you're not doing it for medical reasons, but recreationally you can drink alcohol and be fine.
Well, and I think people are sometimes surprised to hear, like, I start my day with a CBD joint. Like, I do smoke cannabis all day, but I don't start with the stuff I end with.
Right.
So I'm smoking, like, I just ran out this morning. I'm heartbroken. I have the CBD Dutch treat that I grow every year. And it's maybe 4% THC. And it's probably got, like, I've never had it tested, but that's what it's advertised as, and that's what it feels like, so I go with it. I got a bunch of it. But you smoke it, and it doesn't really get you that high, but it gives you all that joint benefit. And that's something that I really enjoy, is like the CBD, the 1-to-1s, the 2-to-1s in the mornings or in the early afternoon when you're not ready to just blast off.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you need that, because, like, I have PTSD, and a lot of times, like, what people don't understand is that THC, like, high is part of the medicinal benefit. That mind alteration is a medicinal benefit for some people. And I think that that's important to remember, and I kind of use it intentionally. When I don't use it intentionally, I get into trouble.
Yeah. Well, and I see, like, so if you're going to get into it, and you're going to get into it medically, figure out your dosages, figure out what works for you, strains. I use edibles more than anything for pain.
Right.
So like afternoonish, nighttime, I'll slap in maybe 50 to 100 milligrams, and that takes care of a lot of pain and those kind of issues. But recreationally, I mean, out of all of them, if you're going to do something recreationally, I would recommend cannabis over alcohol or cocaine or...
I mean, yeah, I would even say, like, if you're just trying to have a good time, maybe don't take potent psychedelics. Maybe just smoke cannabis. I think
exactly.
It's just a lower cost in general, body cost, because I know, like, a lot of people can do, like, heavy dose psychedelics and be fine. There's always a 2-day recovery for me whenever I use any amount of psilocybin or anything like that. Yeah.
At least for the next day.
Yeah.
At least the next day. But yeah, again, with psychedelics, that's a good thing too. You can use them recreationally, but there's so much more value to be found in either micro or macro dosing psychedelics for health benefit, mental benefits.
Right. Yeah.
So especially if you got addiction problems or PTSD, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But again, that's all medical stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I lost the recreational part of it, but for me, it's just always been a good medicine. And I think that if you get in for that it's a good thing to do.
Right. And I think there's a lot of blurred lines about that, and I think I would tell people that's okay. Blurred lines are okay. Like, if someone is enjoying their medicine, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's fine. It's not a big deal. And a lot of the people that are using cannabis are incredibly sick, so you have to look at it from a harm reduction standpoint as well. Like, if they're smoking a joint and you don't like that they're smoking, well, what condition are they treating? And, like, how do you judge that scale? If they have cancer and they're doing a little bit of lung damage, they don't have lung cancer. Maybe they have another cancer that's probably going to shorten their life. So maybe the smoke isn't the biggest concern right now.
Well, and we do have options. So I mean, if you are considered, like it might not be the answer you like, but there are other options. You can vape.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's a little healthier option.
Oh, for sure.
Not necessarily dabbing, but truly vaping.
Yeah.
You can do edibles. There are other options if you're concerned about the lung damage, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I've done it for 30 years, and I'm still doing pretty good.
I smoked cigarettes for years and years. I also vaped the nicotine stuff for a while, and I will say that the effect that cannabis has on my respiratory system is nothing like those other two things.
Yeah,
I think part of it is just you're not even if you're like a heavy smoker, whatever. You're not smoking the equivalent of 3 packs a day like I was when I was smoking. You can't. I bet you can't.
Well, there's just other things to worry about now. Like say cartridges. You don't worry about the flower material you're burning. You're worried about like heavy metals now.
Right. Yeah.
Or whatever, not solvent, but cut that's put in there.
Yeah, like what the vitamin E acetate or whatever they were using.
Hopefully that's not in there anymore.
Yeah, but right. But I was freaking out because I've got people in the illegal markets down south, and they were getting all excited when they started getting cartridges, and I was always, I'm like, bro, that's not real. Okay, if you got, maybe they told you they got it, but you can buy packaging,
Yeah.
And then sure enough, all that stuff was super bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it just scared me. And a lot of my friends wised up. They're like, I had one card. It made me feel weird. So I went back to going burn flour. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Stay away from that stuff, bro.
Well, I mean, as long as it's taken care of, the one good thing, and just because it's tested doesn't mean it's totally clean, but one good thing about the Oregon rec market, or at least legal markets, is generally it's tested for some things.
Right.
So it gives you an idea of what you're getting. I can't imagine what we were smoking on that dirt weed.
Oh, I mean, I'm
sure we got some like nerve damage and
paraquat. I mean,
exactly.
I did a little mini-sode on my podcast called Paraquat. I just said, hey, they were poisoning your weed for a while, guys.
Yes.
And it's like it when you first hear about it, you were like, I was just like, okay, so this is another thing that the United States government did, where they were like, screw this segment of this population. We don't care about them. Fuck them. And we want this outcome, so we're going to poison like huge groups of our... And then I went back and I read articles, and no one was sympathetic. They were like these stuffy old newspapermen, like, the hippies are upset that we've been poisoning them. How they were literally mocking them, and I'm like, dude, like it was just... So we've come a long way.
Well, and then now you see that commercial on TV. Have you seen it? Have you been subject to paraquat?
I haven't seen it. Is there one?
There's a commercial on TV that if you've been subjected to paraquat and you have nerve damage like Parkinson's, that you can join this class action. But it's not. I doubt you could do it for weed. Be like, I was smoking weed in the '90s, and I was smoking brown weed from Mexico, and I think it's full of paraquat, and now I do have Parkinson's. So
I would love.
Can I get on that class action in Mexico?
You know what though? That's a lot of times how some of these things get resolved. I'm not saying it's good or that I approve of it, but in our current litigious society, with not a great social safety net, the way that people resolve things sometimes would be like, hey, you poisoned all of these people.
I'm
so we're, and it's like, we're never going to hold the people who actually made those decisions accountable. And if we do, we're going to wait until they all die of old age before we do anything. Ask Vietnam vets about like Kissinger and stuff, about what stuff that came out. Well, he's still alive, isn't he?
Is he?
Oh, is he? I don't know. I don't want to you're going to ruin your day. I think he still is alive. Hold on.
Oh my
Talk
gosh.
about anti-pop. Oh my gosh.
Well, the war on drugs, man, when, Nancy and Ronald.
He's still alive.
Still alive, huh?
He's 99 years old. He's going to outlive everybody.
Because he never smoked pot.
Yeah, I'm sure that's why. Sometimes
smoked the reefer.
Sometimes people just live forever on spite. Mm-hmm. Are you kind of worried that we may backslide on this cultural legalization and acceptance thing that we've been on for the last few years?
It's just trade-offs. Like you're trading regulation for what we view as freedom.
Right.
Is it freedom? In my opinion, it is for the most part because people are really relaxed about it, at least in Oregon.
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with the stigma anymore, for the most part, unless you're this 99-year-old white man.
You're right.
Or jobs aren't worried about it as much. It's easy to go buy tested cannabis in all kinds of forms with all kinds of options. It's healthier nowadays. And you can grow your own weed fairly easily.
Yeah.
And so I produce 3 to 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds a year.
Oh, yeah.
That gets me through the whole year for myself.
Nice.
And then a little bit more that I can turn into concentrate or edibles or whatever. And so I have all that freedom now. Black market days, we didn't, at least not at that kind of comfort level.
Yeah, if someone chased a robber into your backyard, you weren't fucked too.
Right. Whereas now, technically, if you have a garden and its rec would be 4 plants, medical I think is 12 plus.
It depends on card stuff.
Exactly. That's why I say 12 plus. But just for standard rec, you can grow 4 big ass plants, man.
Oh yeah.
And that's a lot of weed. So even at rec level, you can still grow enough. If someone does steal it and you have proof or whatever, you can call the cops. And they're gonna press charge. All the farms have done it around here. Not all, but farms have done it around here.
That still blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, Sugar Tree. One year we did a interview with them, and that week they had some crackhead come and jump the fence and steal a bunch of, and they caught him down the road. And anyway, but so you got all that, but you trade that off for regulation and taxes.
Right.
I'm willing to pay it. Right now in Oregon, it probably will change in the future, but right now in Oregon, if you have a medical card, you don't have to pay taxes.
I have one and I don't have to pay.
So I mean, how good is that?
It's really good. But so what I'm kind of worried about is like I'm seeing like the reefer madness rhetoric kind of come back into the discourse on the conservative side in a way that I haven't seen in the past 5 or 10 years. And they're starting to try to, it seems like, say that it might, they're taking the cannabis and they're putting it in the same box people have been putting SSRIs in and correlating that with mass shootings and stuff like that.
Oh, I've seen that, yeah.
and I'm just like, wait, let's not do this again, guys. This is whatever cannabis does. I generally, now everyone's their own special snowflake inside, and every drug affects people differently. But a broad generalization I would make is that as someone with maybe a mild history of violence, cannabis doesn't necessarily, as a substance, necessitate violence like other substances may, I would say.
Well, that's a pretty way of putting it. But it's like this, man. And I would dare anybody to take the time and to do this test. Simple test.
Right.
You take a party full of drinkers.
Yeah.
Throw them all in the same room, let them party all night and see what happens. Take the same amount of people, make them all potheads.
Yeah.
Give them a bunch of weed, stick them in a room, see what happens. I can guarantee what's going to happen in both cases. There's going to be fights over here, and there's going to be laughing and fucking too much eating over here.
Right. Someone's going to go get food. There's going to be
and there's going to be too much talking and bullshitting and laughing. Right. It's just true, man. Yeah. I don't know if we'll ever get away from the people that have that cognitive dissonance.
Right.
And conviction that substance is somehow
right.
Like, what was that lady? I don't know who her. She's political, and she said that everybody in these mass shootings has consumed cannabis before.
I think it was the blonde, right? Marjorie
and it's
Taylor
like,
Greene.
What kind of, that is a far reach to correlate.
Right.
I mean, they probably all had cereal for breakfast too at one point in their life. I mean, they probably put gas in their car too at one point in their life. I mean, what do you mean?
That stuff concerns me because I feel like kind of for the last few years, and I listen to a wide variety of media. I'm kind of a podcast addict, so I hear people on the right and left and what they're talking about, and no one was really hitting up the reefer madness angle. And I feel like just this last week, everyone's like, "Wow, okay, we're doing it again." I'm like, "What?" I got whiplash.
Well, I mean, like you had mentioned earlier before we started this, the Supreme Court. Maybe it's all a symptom.
Oh, it's like a power play. It's just like all these hippie new left pet projects of like a woman's right to be a human and people's right to have a joint every now and then are now the enemy again, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess we could say that every woman that's had or wants to have an abortion has probably smoked weed one time in her life. Is that what they're going to say?
I hope not. I don't think that's true, though. I mean,
I don't think so either. I'm making an extreme.
Yeah, it's weird that we seem to be having two different sets of conversations in this country right now, and it's wild.
Yeah, especially that it's the U.S.
Yeah.
We're not a communist country, and we're not a dictatorship usually. And
yeah. So let's talk more about growing. How long have you been growing? Because you make it like I'm not like how long?
In 1999, I threw a plant in the closet with 4 fluorescents.
Okay.
Shop lights.
Okay.
One on each corner of the plant. It grew big, but it was beautiful too. But it was just no buds.
Right.
You can't grow buds with fluorescents.
Okay.
I don't know if you call that growing.
I
tried that one. Yeah, it grew big. I tried that, and then actually it started growing in 2001.
Okay.
And basically started out in the closet with the 250 watt.
Okay.
Grew like an ounce.
Nice.
It looked good. It was bag seed, but it turned out beautiful. One of those lucky charms,
I love bag seed.
It was good bud. And then I switched to outdoor, and I don't know why. I was living in this apartment complex, 2-story complex. I was living on the corner. And because I was on the corner apartment, I was right, and I was on the top story. The carport kind of came right off my floor on that corner.
Nice.
So one night I'm drunk, and I go down. I lived by Food for Less, and I went down and stole a couple pallets, walked them back home, and threw them on top of the carport and threw cannabis up there. I don't know what I was thinking. I put 4 plants. This is way back when it was black market.
Yeah, you're saying 2001. Yeah. Okay, I'm listening. I'm loving it. Let's go.
So I put 4 plants out there, and I put tomato plants around them, and I assumed it'd be okay, but I don't know why I didn't think about it, but I was growing on top of a fucking carport.
Right. Oh, no.
In an apartment complex. Oh, I can't believe they even allowed me to do that. Anyway, so I got the tomato plants around them, and what it would do is, the plant would grow up, and so I'd bend it all the way down to the pot.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it'd grow back up, and I'd bend it down, and grow back up, and I'd bend it down, I'd grow back. By the time I got to the end of the season, I stretched this thing out, dude, and it was like, I was like 12 foot long, man.
Oh, man, like a cannabis snake.
Yeah, it was ugly, but I grew some bud, and I dried it and cured it on my bedroom floor. It covered the whole bedroom. Funny thing is, I had cops at my door several times, and it was right on the corner, so right around that corner from that front door was all that weed.
Yeah, and they never...
So that was my first successful real attempt, and then from then on, it was either indoor or outdoor.
Just whatever you think you could get away with?
Yeah, wherever I could get away with. If it was indoor, I never really got big in indoor.
Right.
I got up to a 400 watt light, but I never had enough space to really get anything decent. Right. And then, hydro was kind of big back then because even when green hit the market and stuff, it was still about black market. It was still about quantity.
Right.
So the faster you could grow, the more you could grow, the better off you were.
Right.
So things like Big Bud, I don't know if you remember that strain, Big Bud.
Actually, I've heard of it.
It's been dead out because it wasn't that great.
There's seed companies that advertise that they have it.
Yeah.
I think they might still have it because no one buys it, but I've been curious about it.
Yeah, I mean, they just basically made that strain just so it would grow the biggest, fattest fucking buds ever.
What did it smell like?
I've never had it.
Oh, okay.
But I remember that was a big thing even in High Times. You
okay.
could buy the seeds in High Times, and that was a big thing because you got these big buds, and that was the game back then. It's just make it look good, but quantity. And now, it's quality, and so now we're pulling out all the terps. We got fuck, it's not just skunk anymore. Back then it was all skunk weed. Now it's fucking Tropicana and gas and spice and pepper.
I feel like cookies is its own family now.
Yeah, you got the citrus, and it's like fuck.
I still gravitate toward like Afghani stuff in general.
Like old school, like.
Well, like this is supposed to be Afghani. It's probably not that close, but it's good. And then old school indica stinky. I've got this Fire of Maruf I've been growing in my backyard that I'm really excited about. That's supposed to be an Afghan land race crossed with Fire OG.
Mm.
So I'm excited about it, and it's starting. One of them early on in veg right after I topped it, it smelled like this plant that was outside a police station in Shawalikot, Afghanistan. When I was in Afghanistan, the plant literally smelled like a corpse. Like we went out back when I started dead, and I'm like, no, it's just the plants. I'm like, all right, whatever.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that when it flowers, it's going to stink.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Now, didn't a lot of those land races take a long time to flower? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking.
I think it depends on where they're at. I think the Afghan stuff, it can go either way depending on elevation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like micro populations depending on like different mountain valleys and stuff that's been isolated geographically for a while. And then my suspecting is they brought in other genetics just like they did in Mexico. It's why like the Mexican red or whatever is dead because they crossed it all with indica so it would flower faster. The Thais in my recollection are the ones that flower longer. They're more sativa leaning. The Afghans, I think, flower faster and they're really cold hardy. Because in Afghanistan it's pretty hot during the summer, but at night and in the winter it gets very bitterly cold. And like I said, I didn't have much experience with cultivation there, so I don't know when their harvest was. But my assumption would be is they would be pushing earlier harvests, like early October, late September, mid-October, rather than pushing it out to the 31st and into November. That would just be my assumption based on the weather there and what I know about our domestic cannabis population.
Yeah.
Some of their plants there are hardy in a way that domestic cannabis cultivators can't understand.
Yeah.
They're doing something sometimes very similar to dry farming. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think the agriculture there is understood in the West, and I think that there's stuff in Afghanistan and like certain like more arid countries, people who produce crops here could learn from. Just the amount of what they're able to do with less. I really admired the farmers there.
Yeah. Well, and like, doesn't cannabis kind of grow wild there?
There are feral populations of cannabis
that's what I mean,
there. Yeah.
feral, yeah.
I don't think there are any like wild cannabis anymore. I think it's all like escaped domestics, so like feral, or like people are cultivating and pretending it just grew there. Because in Afghanistan, while I was there, people would grow it everywhere, like wherever they wanted to. It would be like there'd be like a plant of whatever kind of fruit, and then right next to it there'd be a cannabis plant in their front yard.
Right.
And then the stuff in the fields was more for so you would see varying levels of cultivation just like you would here. You'd see small home gardens out behind police stations where the police were just growing their personal weed that they could smoke. You know, they might have one or two plants behind a person's house, or they might have a whole field. Really like Oregon a lot in the degrees. Like if you went across a valley, the different levels of cultivation.
I see. Yeah.
So very varied, and so you might see someone who might have thrown some seeds in a ditch just to get what he could get, and then you might have someone growing like a trained, I wouldn't call it trellis, but staked plant that. If you took it out of Afghanistan and put it in a backyard in Oregon, it would not look out of place.
Yeah.
So you get all kinds of, but I think what people talk about when they talk about land race is different valleys have very, very specific microclimates that make very, very specific terpene profiles, and then isolating those over time, you want to get those before they disappear due to different rules, regulations, or whatever, different climate change, whatever happens that causes that crop to not be cultivated in there anymore. I think they're dealing with that in Balochistan right now. They're turning to poppy, and so a lot of old cannabis is going away. I don't know what's going on in Afghanistan with cannabis cultivation now. My suspicion would be that under Taliban rule it's decreased, but I can't say whether or not. I haven't heard anything because there's bigger problems in Afghanistan right now. They've got like a countrywide famine that they've been dealing with since the U.S. left. So it's a zoo over there. So hopefully, in the next few years we'll be able to find out more about what's going on. As far as cultivation in Afghanistan, it's close to my heart. It's the first place I ever saw cannabis.
Oh, cool.
So I'm from Texas, so you didn't generally see cannabis just out in the outside and out crowd. And I wasn't one of the cool kids, so no one showed me their closet grow. I joined the army. I wasn't always this way. Yeah,
they didn't trust you, man.
Yeah, they shouldn't have. Anyway, but I saw the I think they were hash because they were thin stalked, very tall plants, very close together. And someone told me that they would beat them on screens. They make hash out of those. And those were the first cannabis plants I saw were hash plants that were outside Kandahar city to the west of the traffic circle. I know, like, only probably vets know what I'm talking about. But there's these fields outside Kandahar city, and some of them are like, I would call more like, they don't really have the same like mass cultivation techniques we do. So they're mass cultivation. They're almost growing it more like you'd see corn growing. So they have like it's all the way up, and then they just beat the whole stalk against a screen. They make hash. And then there's other cultivation that resembles more like what you would see here, but still in the ground. They're not really bringing it up into pots. If they do, they're using like brick planters as raised beds. There's no like smart pots, and like no one's like building up to elevation unless that's part of how they're getting water to it, if that makes sense. So they'll dig canals around it and water it that way using flood irrigation, kind of like what you see Roganja doing out there. They do flood irrigation out there, I think once every 3 days.
Nice.
So yeah, that's the
wow.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of different ways. So yeah, sorry I went on a tirade.
No, that's good. It's good. I didn't know all that.
Yeah, I fell in love. I'm weird. I saw the plant and I thought, that's neat. I would like to grow that one day before I ever like figured out like how much it would help me.
Yeah.
I saw that. I still talk about. I saw this outside this police station. There were like these 6 little plants and they smelled like dead bodies, and I was just. They were like purple black.
Yeah.
And they were spiky looking. They didn't look like what I thought weed looked like, because I didn't know, and it was just amazing to me. Looked like a cactus almost.
There you go. Some of that high altitude stuff.
Yes. And then so it was just amazing. So you went through the outlaw days. You're hiding your grow. At what point did you move into your living space and kind of do it openly? Was that after legalization?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the black market days, I didn't tell anybody shit.
Right.
I mean, best friends or not, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, second 2015 hit, man. I had seeds popping in July 7th, 2015, I think we went rec.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was ready, dude. Nice. And from then on, I've just been hammering it. This year I've only got 9, maybe 12 plants.
Okay.
But I mean, there's been some years where in my backyard, dude, I was a little fucking nervous. I mean, I had 8-9 foot plants in a 6 foot fence.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're talking 2 and 3. I saw your plants, man.
My wife told me to go for it, and I went for it.
Dude, like I said, just be careful, because someone's going to see 3 foot of those buds sticking out and go,
I think I might be sleeping in my garden.
Yeah.
I think I might actually be out in there in a tent. I'm not sure.
I would. So, I mean, that's been my game the last 3-4 years, is just trying to get as much cannabis as I can from no more than 6 foot tall plants.
Right.
That if that means trellising, fine. If that means mainlining, fine. If that means, it depends on the strain and how it grows.
Right.
But if it means topping the shit out of it and making this little 6 foot ball, whatever it takes. I like it that way anyway, because I like basically 1 pound plants.
Right.
6 foot tall, 1 pound plants. That's what I go for.
Yeah, and that's what I was going for a long time. And then, I was able to go for it this year. And
Good.
I had the time, and I had seeds I wanted to pop in February that I had time to cut. I had an indoor space, and I was like, you know what? This year, I'm doing it. I'm going 10 footers.
Yeah.
And I think I actually am.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there is a learning curve to growing good cannabis for sure.
Yeah.
But, the potential is there. You can grow 20-pound plants, man. Yeah. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but I think it was Jollibee made a 20-pound plant. But
I've seen the biggest I think I've seen are that I know of, right? A lot of people get cagey around yields when you're out in big cultivation areas during they're growing those trees. But I think 5-6 pounds is what I'm used to.
Yeah.
Because I've seen I've never seen a 20-foot plant, but I've seen 12, 15 easy.
Yeah. I mean, you can just you got to start early. There's a lot of stuff you got to do, but they grow like weeds, man.
Yeah, you got to support them, I think, is the biggest thing, is you got to keep them supported.
And what they don't tell you, man, with those big plants, you get so much freaking larf, dude.
I'm going to find out.
Dude, and I mean, not that you can't use it.
Right.
But good quality bud is still going to always be your outer shell, and everything else is going to be larfy going, exponentially inward. So, I mean, if you're making concentrates, edibles, that larf is awesome.
Yeah, well,
but unless you're making pre-rolls, I don't know how good they are to smoke.
I'm trying to get some dry sift screens one of
There
these
you go.
days.
That works too.
I'm hoping that
Yeah.
by the time harvest is over and I have all my, because I cure my my trim in jars too.
Mm-hmm.
So like I've still got cured trim in jars that I haven't used yet that I want to sift. I want to get some screens and try my hand at dry sifting because I'm going to take this Afghanistan fetish all the way. Just do dry sift hash.
Yeah.
Maybe get myself some traditional clothing.
Yeah. I will tell you this from my growing experience though is, and again, humble opinion here, but for people that are going to start out growing or even people that haven't expanded, like, I started out growing in soil.
Right.
I've grown hydro, never done deep water. Don't think I ever will.
I don't think I will either.
I've done cocoa, which is considered hydro. I've done tables. I've done various things, but honestly, the best bud I've ever experienced or had or grown even has always been organic in soil.
Yeah.
And I just recommend that style.
Well, I think if this is your first time growing cannabis, especially if it's your first time growing anything,
Yeah.
please use soil.
There you go.
It's a beautiful buffer for
That- it
some
is.
of your
Yeah.
mistakes.
Yeah.
And if you're in veg and you're using a photoperiod plant and you accidentally burn it, you can give it recovery time.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
you'll be okay.
Yeah. The only hard part about organics is just knowing what the plant's going to need like 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, well, that's a learning curve for sure, and you can do a little bit of gaming the system. If you're learning to grow, and I still do this sometimes. Sometimes I'll hit it with a little bit of CalMag, just a little.
Oh, dude, it's like the cure all, man. It's
Well,
that's like the antibiotic of the cannabis world.
Yeah, I know, but you know,
you sick? Here's a little CalMag.
you know what, man? You know what? It's got some red spots. CalMag got mites. CalMag. You know what? It never hurts to just give it a little CalMag. It does.
Little
Don't
leaf
do
curl over
Yeah.
water. CalMag.
Okay. No, but I do. Like if I like a lot of times that little bit of nitrogen they put in a lot of the CalMag is just enough to get you to when your nutrients are available. Is
Yeah.
basically what
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
And I think that's what the real secret of having a little CalMag is, just that little nitrogen kick that they put in there. Because like if you're, like you said, if you're dry amending the top of the soil, you got to wait 2 weeks, but all of a sudden your plant's like, I need it now. Like, we'll have a little bit of this now.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the rest is available. And I think what some people are calling that synganic growing or whatever.
I disagree. Actually, and I'll be honest, I've said this on my podcast. Actually, not this year, but the last 2.5, 3 years before this.
Yeah.
I grew hybrid. I called it growing hybrid.
Right,
And
yeah.
what I did exactly that. I was rotating organics with salts or whatever you want to call it. But organic with salts, and I was using salts to do any corrections,
Right.
and any immediate stuff, and then organics in general and
Yeah.
teas, and it works great, dude. It works awesome.
I really enjoy it.
It's yeah.
You can reach me, Uncle Dig, on Instagram at Uncle Dig. The bumper music on this podcast was produced by Chad DeVilliers on ukulele. He can be followed on YouTube at Ukuleles Are Stupid or on Instagram at Chadwick Enterprises. Thank you for listening to the Bagseed Chronicles.